Hello, Collateral Gaming listeners. Chazzle Dazzle here from the Trial by Error Variety Show podcast. I just wanted to take a few seconds to invite you guys over to what we do. No, it's not video games, but we do invite really awesome and unique bands from all over the world. We dig deep into their souls and find really cool stories to tell you, and there's tons of music every week, so subscribe to us wherever you subscribe to your podcast. We look forward to having you.
This episode of Bonus Round, we're going to be talking about Metroid Prime Trilogy. Stay tuned, the show starts right now.
Loud crash. I'm sorry.
Welcome to Collateral Gaming Bonus Round. I'm Ashley Chancellor.
And I'm Zachary Guillot.
And we are podcasting straight from San Antonio, Texas. And yes, my friends, we are a 420 friendly podcast. So whatever you have, be it blunts, bongs, dabs, joints, smoke it if you've got it. Although Zach
Yes,
here, he isn't. You're not calling from San Antonio, right?
No, sir. I am in Southeast Georgia, Jessup, Georgia today.
Wow. Okay. So yeah, we're branching out a little bit. I mean, we've had some guests from other states before, but this is the first time here for Zach. We were actually we started talking about this because we started talking about Metroid, right?
Oh yeah. I think I saw a post that you made on Facebook, and it kind of sparked it within me. I was like, oh, he's a Metroid fan. I got to message this dude, and it just kind of spiraled from there. So it was really interesting.
Yeah, no, it was. And then I thought, you know what? I've been wanting to talk about Metroid Prime for a while,
Yes.
Specifically the Metroid Prime trilogy for a while. So you know what? Let's just do it. It's the this month actually is the anniversary of the very first Metroid game. Let's see, Metroid, the original game was released. Hold on, I'm going to do a little bit of research here. August 6th, 1986.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, as of the time of recording, it is the 9th, so that's still pretty fresh. If you heard that just now, that was my daughter. I don't know if that picked up on the mic, but
I heard her. So.
You heard her?
I did.
It was 34 years ago.
A long time, man. That's crazy. And look at, hopefully, with the hopeful soon release of Metroid Prime 4, we'll kind of get to see where it's come in this amount of time from like the little 8-bit side-scrolling Samus just to, what the Metroid Prime trilogy became. I'm really looking forward to seeing, where it goes. And it's been a lot of history in the making,
Yeah, hell yeah. I was super stoked whenever they talked about Metroid Prime 4, which apparently, when they originally announced that it was going to be a new team of developers, but recently Nintendo made the decision to change it back over to Retro Studios, who were the developers behind the original trilogy, because what was being developed wasn't in line with the series vision. And you know what? I'm actually kind of okay with that, because I know Retro Studios did a good job. If Nintendo didn't like what the new developers were doing, then I'd like to see what Retro will bring to the table.
Yeah, I wasn't too keen on the idea of Retro Studios not having a hand in it, but I'm definitely all right with a delay for them to get back involved with it, because I loved the original trilogy so much. And, if you change the developing style, it just kind of takes away from the core essence of the games themselves. And, like I said, I love them. So I'm really happy that they're doing this, and I don't mind waiting a little bit longer,
Yeah, I feel the same. I'm definitely happy to wait. I mean, look what happened with God of War.
Yep.
That game that took years to develop, and I think a long part of that was probably just not developing anything at all, and so they kind of got their everything in order. So long wait times, develop. We get good games as a result.
Yep, and that game is beautiful, so they worth the wait.
Yeah, exactly. But Yeah, and Metroid Prime kind of has its own distinctive flavor, I think, that sets it apart from the Metroid series as a whole. I mean, there's still those key aspects, there's still that Metroid feel, but there are some clear differences, right?
Yeah, I feel like the first thing that I definitely noticed, especially with the first game, was the addition of the scan visor, just the ability to bring up a whole other visor where you could just collect data and information on everything that you see in the world. And it's different with the first game and the second game. Like with the first game, you have the little light orange and the dark orange blocks.
Hmm.
And the second game and the third game, everything is highlighted and it's like red if it's super important, if it goes in your logbook. But that was the first thing I noticed, and I loved that. I was just that set it apart from the rest of the series to me, and I loved collecting data and kind of forming the story myself with how I just scanned everything.
Yeah, 100%. I feel like there's just this immersive feel, and being
Hmm.
able to see everything from Samus's perspective, having the first person view, which I think some people were kind of skeptical about, but ultimately we got a first person adventure, not just another first person shooter. But I did like the scanning. Some people maybe not as keen on it. They don't feel like they feel like they're stopping the action. And having to scan everything, but then again, you don't have to scan everything. Personally, I love it. I love finding out more of the story. I like going in and that's what you get. There's not much story if you don't scan. So you have to look around, you have to find the lore, you have to scan random things that maybe aren't even necessary for progression but give you more context. And for my style of gameplay, I always had a really interesting time with that. And there's
Yep.
something that's different about Metroid Prime that's really cool about being able to do that, to just scan everything, and I don't mind. I don't feel like cut off from the action at
Not at
all.
all. If anything, it adds to it because there's a level of suspense that comes with like finding a piece of data. Like the first time you come to the phase on mines, and there's like a room with a giant drill in it that you can use the boost ball to
Oh
spin
yeah.
around, and there's like a missile expansion on the left side. It's an ice beam door straight ahead, but there's a pirate log to the right of the boost beam station where you scan it, and they start talking about, hey, Samus is here, get ready because the hunter is here, we have to deal with this. And
Yeah.
because obviously they know that they're probably no match for Samus, especially if the player knows what they're doing. So it's really cool to be able to see that level of fear that not only you as a player can have entering new areas and finding out new information, but that level of fear that they have knowing that you're there. Because I mean, you're just this badass intergalactic bounty hunter that just takes everything on and just kicks ass. So I
Yes.
love that.
Yeah, no, I did like that level of interaction because the Metroid games as a whole give you the feeling of being isolated. Of course, we have some different
Hmm.
examples. Metroid Prime 3 is one of those, which we'll talk about. Metroid Other M kind of does that as well, and there's even some aspects of that in Fusion where you're not as alone as you are in other games, but as a whole. The series does focus on this isolated aspect, which I think goes back to the origins. Metroid was originally actually based off of it was inspired by Alien.
Yep.
And if you've ever seen the first Alien movie, I mean it's a very isolated film, I think, in a lot of ways.
Very much
Um,
so.
so I think, and I love that aspect. And so, having to have that interaction with the space pirates, for instance, when you scan and actually seeing, logs that are about you and what you're currently doing and saying, oh, now I read this and it's because I'm here in this place or I've been interacting with this planet, really gives you that level of feedback that's really cool. Metroid Prime 2 Echoes also kind of gets into it whenever you first enter the space pirate base in Aegon Wastes.
Yep.
So, but yeah, I mean, I guess we'll start with Prime One. Um,
One of the best games. I love it so much. That's my personal thing. I think I've beaten it like 15 times at this point.
wow.
I can't get enough of it, man. It's such a good game. It was the first really immersive and story based game that I dove into as a kid. I think I was 8 years old the first time I played it, and it was beautiful, but it was also terrifying, and I had no clue what was going on.
It
So it was just,
is. It is terrifying. Like there's kind of this like dark tone throughout. I certainly had to turn the brightness up because it's just hard to see things, but that adds
hmm
to the atmosphere. And then the fucking Chozo ghosts. I know that they're not that hard to beat. Okay, it's like I think yeah, it's a couple super missile shots, or you said a super missile and a charge beam, right?
Yep, that's usually how I take them out.
I think I came to that same conclusion whenever I've played with them before, but the Chozo ghosts to me are still terrifying. I hate like the music plays, the lights go out, and I'm just
Yep.
like I want to get rid of these bastards as soon as possible.
It gets really easy once you get the X-ray visor, but
Yeah.
prior to getting the X-ray visor, it's annoying because you have no idea where they're gonna pop up next. And like you said, the music is my favorite part. Like I think the first time you hear that music in the entire game is when you go into the pirate research facility in the Fendrana Drifts and the Metroid breaks out of its glass cage.
Yeah.
And that's when you're like, okay, all right, this is what I'm gonna hear when I'm dealing with situations like this. And every single time, it doesn't matter where you are in the Chozo ruins, every time they pop up, that theme comes on, and you're like, well, fuck, now I have to deal with these things. And
That's a terrifying moment too in the space pirate base in Fendrana Drifts. I remember, and that's where you get the thermal visor.
yep,
So, which does make fighting the Metroids and the Spice Pirates a lot easier. But I remember, yeah, when the Metroid pops out of the cage, and you haven't really faced a Metroid before in the game.
nope, this is the first time ever laying eyes on one. And my first thing was like, oh, this thing's kind of cute. And then it breaks out of the cage, and I was like, oh shit, no. Yeah, because I didn't know how to deal with it, and I didn't want to shoot it because I like viewing the enemies and what they can do. Like, it's not, I mean, yes, sometimes I'll just try to kill them as soon as possible, but I like seeing what the creators of the game had as far as ideas for enemy attacks. And the first time the Metroid like opened its tentacles and just flew at my face, I was like, oh shit. And and then yeah, you just had to figure out that you had to drop a bomb to get him off of you because yeah, that didn't know that until
Yeah, you got to go into morph ball, drop the bomb, and then to kill him, you have to freeze him and then missile him. That's the most effective way.
yep,
Um,
or like 6 charge beam shots and then they just explode violently.
yeah, Metroids are uh, at the same time like a cute and terrifying enemy because they'll just suck the life force right out from you. But I do remember that moment whenever you encounter the first Metroid. What and I like what you said about you sometimes you want to kill enemies right away, but for me my first instinct was I got to scan this shit.
Well, yeah, okay, yeah, I should have definitely said that because that got to get all the information.
If you're not
I
going
didn't do.
for 100% even, you still want to scan the enemy because that's how you find out its weaknesses and how to beat
Mm-hmm.
it.
100%. And there were. Oh, I love the different types of the same kind of enemies too. And you see this especially in Corruption. Well, I'm sure we'll talk more about that later. But you have the different levels of pirates, like the space pirates, the commando pirates, the airborne pirates, and God, those things are so annoying in Metroid Prime because if you get them down to just enough where their health is low, they just suicide. They kamikaze you.
Yes. Or they'll go into hyper mode and then shit. Now I got to go into hyper mode,
Yep.
which we'll talk about. But yeah, no. And I remember, especially in Prime 3, whenever you have to scan the pirates for the first, I had to open up the scan visor every time pirates came up because I mean they all kind of look the same, so I was never sure which one
Mm-hmm.
was a new enemy that I'd never faced before and which one wasn't. And with the Prime series as a whole, you have to be careful because there are some one-time scans or some enemy scans that are just missable. The enemy just doesn't appear later. That happened to me. When I beat Metroid Prime, I beat it almost 100% aside from one logbook scan. Came to find out it was the Ice Shriek Bat in Fendrana Drifts, which in certain versions of the game, I think in the NTSC versions or in the PAL versions, one of those, which I think the Prime Trilogy is the PAL version. But yeah,
I
in at
think
least
so. Yeah.
in one of those, the enemy disappears forever after you get the either the thermal visor or the X-ray visor. So it's a missable scan. And for me, I mean, that was kind of a missable scan for no reason. Like I understand with a boss, okay, I understand with the lore in the beginning and the frigate, that's different. But it kind of did cheese me finding out that there was this one enemy that just doesn't show up again, and I was like, shit.
Yep. It always infuriated me because I don't think I think Metroid Prime 1 is the only game where I've gotten all the scans. Metroid Prime 2, there was just so much stuff. And there's like differences in the Shriek Bats. Like you were talking about earlier, in each area there's like in the Sanctuary Temple in Metroid Prime 2, there's those electronic Shriek Bats that show up near what is it? It's the first time you come in contact with the spider ball track, where the dark other portal to the left, and they drop down, and you have like literally less than half a second to scan them, or you miss it, and they're gone.
Really, yeah.
So it makes me so angry. The Shriek Bats die so quickly because they kill themselves trying to get you.
Yeah.
So
There are a few enemies that are like that. I know, or the in Metro Prime 2, the Alpha Splinter. I think you have to scan it before it turns into the Dark Alpha Splinter. You only have a few
yep,
seconds before it does it. But
yep,
Metroid Prime 1 definitely, one criticism I'll offer is that I don't like the way, like you said, with the orange squares.
yeah.
It does make it a little bit harder to figure out what's scannable. So I am happy that they improved upon that in the other two games. And with the full outlines and actually clear distinctions, instead of you had like orange and red, now you had, blue, uh, or red, which denotes. And I think Prime 3 even separates it maybe a little bit further, if I'm not mistaken. Or no, they changed it a little bit. They turned like enemy scans and or boss scans into red. But anyway,
Yeah, yeah, they definitely do that. I actually just finished Prime 3 about half an hour before we started recording. Again, I finished it, and that was actually my first time 100%ing the game. And the heavy bosses are the red scans, and sometimes you'll get the red tokens for
mhm,
scanning them, and sometimes you'll just get, it added to your logbook. But most of the stuff, if it was important, it was either blue or red. If you'd already scanned it, just like in the other game, or
green.
in Echoes, it turns green, and yeah. So
Yeah. For me, I just like scanning everything. So for the most part, I didn't miss things, but I do remember there are some things I missed. I missed the Ice Shriek Bats. The first time I played Prime 1, I didn't quite beat it, but I got to Phase on Mines. And I think I gave up because I realized that I couldn't get 100% and it just cheesed me. Because I missed, there were some fucking, I think it was the fucking barbed war wasps in the incinerator drone fight. Because there's the ram war wasps that only show up in the one fight where you get the missile, and then there's the barbed war wasps that only show up in the incinerator drone fight. And if you're not careful, I mean, they just look like fucking war wasps. I didn't think
yep.
any different.
Oh man, now that you've said that, I'm kind of mad. I'm like, did I get that?
Well, in the Prime trilogy, which is the version you and I both play, right? The with the
Yeah.
Wii controls,
Yep.
it does tell you when you get 100% logbook scans, so you'll know. I remember whenever I was fighting Dark Samus and at the end of Prime 2, every time I got that final scan, it would tell me 100%.
Oh man, that means I'm definitely gonna have to go back through. And plus, I
Yeah.
have to go back through all three games on hyper mode because I haven't done that yet. And so that I'll try to make sure that I collect everything.
I started playing Prime 1 on hyper mode. That's where I actually went back and I got that Ice Shriek Bat scan. And for me, I'm going to consider it 100% because I
Yep.
got through the game 100% almost. Got every single scan, every single pickup, every single scan except for one. And then what I did is I played up to the point where I get to Phendrana Drifts in Metroid Prime 1 and I scanned the Ice Shriek Bat in the Ice Ruins. And I'm like, okay.
Mm.
And I got the token. It was like 100% scans. Okay, good. So I will say Prime 1 is the easiest to get all of the logbook scans because I think there's the smallest amount. At the same
Yep.
time, it's the easiest to miss one or two.
hmm
So
Especially, the first time I played through the game, when you first interact with the Hunter Metroids, I think that's in the quarantine lab of the Phazon mines.
Mhm,
I think that's where you first run into them.
I think so.
I didn't scan those. The first time I played through the game, I was just like, oh, these things are terrifying. I got to kill them. And then I fought the Omega Pirate, and, I never went back and I scanned those Hunter Metroids, and it infuriated me. The Fission Metroids, I got those, and those things suck.
Those things suck. If you don't kill
Oh
them right
my
away, they split up. And then before
God.
long, you can get into completely unmanageable because they can split up and then they can split up and it's
Yep.
just a mess. But
Power bombs are helpful in that area, though. They just take them
yeah.
out in one hit. And I'll use the power bombs in the final fight with Metroid Prime because when he'll spawn those pools of Phazon and the Metroids come out, and you're like, oh God.
Yeah, I think I did the same thing. The Metroid Prime fight is actually really cool. I
It's
like
an amazing fight. It's so good.
Emperor Ing kind of mirrors a lot of that too, but in the Metroid Prime fight, you just you have to switch, to the beam to fit its weakness, which you had to toy
Yep.
around with the Space Pirates before. But it was really fun switching between the beams, at least in the first half of the fight, the outer shell.
Yeah, I found it really interesting, and I really liked how his attacks kind of were centered around what beam you were using. You know, of course, like if he's red, you got to use the plasma beam. If he's white, you got to use the ice beam. But you know, like you could actually freeze him if you had the ice spreader, which is underneath one of the bridges in the Magmore Caverns. If you have the ice spreader and you hit him in the face with it, it'll freeze him for a second, and it'll automatically transition into the part of the fight where he like charges you, and you have to go into the trenches underneath him and roll underneath him. It'll like knock his health down even quicker than that.
Nice.
So I love that aspect, and you know he'll like pick up orbs where he'll shoot those what are they, energy orbs that they'll float up, and you can just take them out really quick and get those pickups for lost ammunition. It's great.
Yeah, and I remember getting all of the charge combos, and they're not as useful as you think they would be. But against certain bosses, when a boss has or an enemy has a particular weakness to that one, then you're like, fuck yeah. So I remember, I think with Metroid Prime, I was spamming charge combos. So when it was power beam, I was spamming super missiles. When it was the ice beam, I was using the ice spreader.
Yeah, you can take out the Omega Pirate in 4 shots with the ice spreader.
Really?
If you time it right. Yeah, because the first time you destroy all of his limbs, and he like calls in the space pirates with whatever he says, it's like I have no idea how to. And then he goes invisible, and you wait for him to. You hear the little noise, and you know you can see him with the X-ray visor. You shoot him once. He'll take a 4th damage. Like you'll knock out 25% of his health right there, and then he'll spawn a second time on the other side of the room, and you can hit him again with the ice spreader, and you've gotten him down in one cycle, and he's halfway gone. He's dead. He's almost dead. And then you do it a second time, and you can win the fight in like 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's
and
really
you can
cool.
it's really cool. And you don't even have to worry about the space pirates, because when he does his ground pound, the shockwave, it kills them all. So it's like he doesn't even care. He's like, yeah, I asked you guys to help, but you're dead, so fuck all of you. Get out of my way. I got this, woman.
I like that you found different ways of fighting, the bosses pretty quickly. Because from what I understand, Prime 1 is a game that is meant to be played, and you try to speed run through and play through it as quickly as you can, collecting everything along the way.
Yep.
I think a lot of Metroid games are built that way, although 2 and 3 not as much. But Metroid games overall, I think, are meant to be sped run. I mean, that was one of the original requirements for clearing the original Metroid. Was it was based on item percentage and how quickly you beat the game. And this carries over to all the games. Is you get a different ending.
Yeah.
So I think in the Prime series, it's just based on collectibles. But still, I think in the very first game, Prime 1, being able to speed run. In fact, I mean, there's a lot of the term for sequence breaking actually originated from Metroid Prime. That's where the term originated, and people started, talking about sequence breaking, and that spawned a community, was finding ways of, in some cases, glitching the game to get through it more quickly or collect as few items as possible while going through.
Yeah, I remember there's a glitch where you can get the space jump boots literally as soon as you land on Talon 4.
Yeah,
like there's a starburst plant that you can lock onto, and you just dash to the right. I think it only worked on the GameCube version, though. They patched it for the Trilogy, and that made me really sad.
I'm sure they did. I remember in the GameCube version of Echoes, I actually there's something that happens if you fuck up, you can get locked out of the Caretaker class drone fight, and the game is bricked. And so I was actually trying to sequence break to complete the game, because in Sanctuary Fortress there's another part where you can actually sequence break by jumping across a gap that you're supposed to grapple beam across the opposite way. So I was trying to sequence break to continue playing the game, but it didn't work. I ended up having to restart the entire game. It really pissed me off.
Yep.
I got all the way to Sanctuary Fortress, and then I had to restart the entire game. So
yeah, and the first 2 temples on that game. Okay, now I love Metroid Prime 2. Do not get me wrong. I'm not going to just absolutely take a fat shit on this game, but I cannot stand the Torvus Bog. I despise it because it just feels long.
Too.
Yep, it feels so long and drawn out. It really doesn't get interesting to me until you get the gravity boost, fighting the Alpha Blog at the bottom of the chamber, and so. It's just, with how often the areas lock up and you have to fight those Dark Commando pirates, and you literally have to beat them before you can leave the area.
And they show up everywhere in Torvus Bog. They're the Chozo ghosts of that game.
Yes, they are. And they're so annoying, and they're so much harder to kill unless you have the Dark Visor. And by the time you get the Dark Visor, they're easy because you can just stay locked on to them. But you have to beat the temple before you get that. So
yeah, you have to use the Dark Visor, which is that game's equivalent of the X-ray visor.
Yep.
I mean, I guess we'll get into to Prime 2 Echoes now, which is I think I have a hard time saying because it's really hard to say what my favorite game is of the series because I love them all for different reasons. But there's something that's always drawn me to Echoes, and I'm not sure what it is, but it does feel very different from Prime. A lot of people see it as kind of a dark sheep of the franchise, and then Corruption has its own differences as well, which we'll get into. But Prime 1 definitely does feel a lot more like regular Metroid games. It has that feel. You go through areas, you backtrack through areas multiple times. I remember in the very beginning of the game, you got to go through. You get on Talon 4, then you got to go through Chozo Ruins, get the Various Suit, go to Magmore Caverns, run through Magmore Caverns to get the Fendrana Drifts. You get the Boost Ball in Fendrana Drifts. Then you run back through Magmore Caverns, back to Talon 4 Overworld, and then you get the Space Jump, and then you got to run all the way back through Magmore Caverns, back into Fendrana Drifts.
Yep.
So
yeah, it's like the first time you go to Fendrana Drifts, there's a lot of missile expansions encased in ice, and you can't get them until you get the plasma beam way later in the game. That's like deep in the heart of the Magmore Caverns, and you look at them for 90% of the game. Like there's an energy tank in the Fendrana Caves. It's like the 12th or 13th one that you can collect, but you have to stare at that thing the entire game, and you can't get it. It teases you, and that kind of stuff. Yep.
There's a lot of backtracking, and that's kind of a staple of the Metroid franchise or Metroidvania style gameplay overall. And for better or for worse, some people like it, some people hate it. I definitely never minded it. I liked, because I'm a huge fan of the Zelda series, so I liked going back to areas and using new items that I got. In fact, for me, Metroid has always kind of felt like Space Zelda. A little bit more,
that.
a little more action oriented, but there's more focus on the combat. But at the same time, it has a lot of the same style of gameplay. You have puzzles that are solved by gaining new items, and when you gain new items, you can access areas that you weren't able to access before. But Metroid does focus a lot more on the backtracking. Prime 2 and Prime 3 kind of differ from Prime 1 in that. I will say there's a lot less backtracking. The game is a lot more segmented, especially Prime 2. I mean, you go to you start in the Temple Grounds, then you go to Aegon Waste, then you pretty much stay in Aegon Waste, then you go to Torvus Bog. There's one part where you go back to Aegon Waste for a little bit, but you go right back to the Torvus. All right, and then you get to Sanctuary Fortress. I think at different points in the game, you do go back to Aegon and you do go back to Torvus, but you mostly spend the time in Sanctuary. Aside from having to, when you go to Torvus to get the power bomb and the, after getting the spider ball. But
and you have to backtrack to the, I think it's the Aegon Waste where you get the Sunburst, the power up for the light beam. Is it Aegon Waste or is it the Overworld?
I think you get it in
Temple Grounds. Yeah. Temple Grounds. Yeah.
Yeah, and the Dark Burst is in Aegon though. And
there you go. Yeah.
I think so is the Sonic Boom.
Oh. Yeah, I love that weapon so much. It's so cool the way it causes a prism effect on the screen. It's really nice.
And it's fast. But the charge combos definitely don't feel as useful as they can be because you get them like so late in the game that it's almost, I did. I gotta say, I guess you could go after the Sunburst and the Dark Burst pretty early on, but in this playthrough, I didn't get them until the end. One thing that is different about Metroid Prime 2, I guess we'll talk about that. There's a couple major differences that set it apart. One thing is the beam ammo. You have light beam ammo and you have dark beam ammo. Some people hate it. I didn't mind it because getting ammo is not that hard. If you're low on one, you just shoot the other. So there's always unlimited ammo, and you're never completely unlimited. You can charge it to use it if you're out. And then you get the Annihilator Beam late in the game in Sanctuary Fortress after beating Sanctuary, and you have to, and it uses both light and dark ammo. But
that beam is awesome, though.
Yeah, it was awesome, and that is definitely the best beam in the game. It has, unlike Prime 1 where the power beam has the greatest rate of fire, in Prime 2 the Annihilator Beam has the greatest rate of fire. It is fast, and so is the Sonic Boom. It's instantaneous.
I really like the Annihilator Beam because you don't have to lock on to enemies for it to home in on them. Like if you're in a rush and there's a lot of enemies attacking you, you can just switch to it real quick and just rapid fire, and it'll just take them out really quick.
It definitely came useful in the Emperor Ing fight. I will say that what pissed me off is I would use the Annihilator Beam to to set traps for enemies using the light crystals and light beacons. But the problem is that it always tries to lock onto the enemies when I try to do that. But it's the best thing in the game. Once you get the Annihilator Beam, you could just fuck off because
you just annihilate.
You can kill all the Ing easily because all you have to do is it's so funny whenever whenever you shoot a light. I guess we got to explain the light crystals and the light beams too, or beacons too. But
shoot a light crystal, they come to it.
Yeah, you shoot the light crystal, and they're both lured to it, but they also die as soon as they touch it. So I just get this moment of haha, stupid.
Yeah. Oh, and you can, going back to the scans, like the light crystal, the darkened light crystal, when you hit a light crystal with the dark beam, it encases it and you can't use it.
The nullified crystal, the
nullified crystal, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of them are different scans that you can pick up, and I loved discovering that because my last run through of Prime 2 was actually when I discovered that. I was like, oh, these are all different scans?
And the beacons too.
Yes.
So there's 6 in total. But you can do that same trick early on if you just use the dark beam to nullify the crystal and then the light beam as soon as they get close. But I don't think I took really advantage of it until I got the Annihilator Beam, and it was just so fun. Just one shot, they get lured, but they also died. It's just fucking stupid. But that is another aspect of the game. In Prime 2, there's 2 worlds. There's the light world and there's the dark world, kind of like A Link to the Past, right? Or light ether and dark ether. Dark ether's atmosphere is corrosive, and it constantly causes you to lose health while you're there, which it can be stressful. It's not too bad once you get the dark suit, which you get early in the game. After beating Aegon, it's not too hard actually because you can get through it just losing about an energy point per second. And then the light suit at the end of the game completely nullifies that effect. But I remember in the very beginning, running through in the various suit, it's pretty stressful. You have to be careful. You can't fight enemies along the way. You're rushing from one beacon or crystal to another. And those safe zones are, these light crystals, and then the light beacons, which are just temporary. So you have to constantly keep an eye, and at least when you're in the safe zones, your health does regenerate, which is good. So at the end of the game, when you get the light suit, it's actually kind of a bonus because when you're in the dark world, you can regenerate.
Yeah, the light suit is actually one of my favorite suits from the entire trilogy too, just because of the way. Yeah, I mean, she could literally shank somebody with her kneecaps. Like, those things are so spiked. And I like the 3 orbs of light on her chest. I also love the fact that you can ride beams of light with that suit. The entryway to a sanctuary temple, there's a beam of light that you can ride up to the top, and there's an energy tank just waiting for you. Yeah. And I didn't know that until I accidentally ran into it. After getting the light suit, I accidentally walked into it, and there was a cutscene, and I was like, wait, what? And she teleports up, and at first I thought I died. I had no idea what was happening, and so when I appeared and there's an energy tank in front of me, I'm like, huh, I can do this. Nice. And then later on when you're hunting the Sky Temple keys, of course, at the entryway to the Sanctuary Temple in the Dark World, you have to ride the Beam of Light and use the screw attack to get across and kill the Ing Cache and get the Sky Temple key. I think that's like the 6th or 7th one that you have to find. So the Beams of Light and the light suit aspect of the game are really cool. I love it, and I spent most of the game just looking forward to getting that suit. Yeah. It's so nice. So
the light suit is definitely a badass design. I like the design of the dark suit as well, and you better like it because you're going to spend most of the game in the dark suit.
Yes. Oh. I'm sorry. I do not like that suit at all. So. No, not particularly. Just because her shoulder pads look like just rings. I don't like it the way they're forward instead of to the side. I've always liked the way the various suit shoulder pads looked. Like since Prime was the first game I played, the normal power suit, when you beat Falagra and you got the various suit, that was just a huge step up. And then the dark suit just kind of, took that away from me. Plus, I also was angered how it didn't really, it helps you when you're in dark ether, but it only slows down how much damage you take. It doesn't actually help you, which made sense, but it was still aggravating,
Yeah. I agree. I like how in the first game in Prime 1 all the different suits are just different color schemes. I mean, you
Yeah.
get the various suit, which does look different, owing to the fact that, and then that actually the reason why the various suit has those big shoulder pads is actually because in Metroid 2, in the original Metroid 1, the different suits were just recolors, but in Metroid 2 they had to make a distinction with the various suit because it's a black and white game on the Game Boy,
Mm-hmm.
so
Yep.
that's actually where those distinctive shoulder pads came from. Just a little history lesson, but I like how and after that, the gravity suit's just a recolor, and the Phazon suit's just a recolor, which looks badass. Um,
Oh, yes.
and
The
the Phazon
Phazon
suit is
suit.
actually what becomes Dark Samus. The series is actually the Metroid Prime, as the title works for the whole series, because the main antagonist is Metroid Prime. Metroid Prime inhabits the Phazon suit, and then becomes Dark Samus, who becomes kind of a minor antagonist and the final boss of Metroid Prime 2, but then the final antagonist of Metroid Prime 3.
Which you don't really learn that unless you 100% the first game. Because if
Exactly.
you 100% the first game, you get the cutscene at the end where you see the bubble of what's left of Metroid Prime, and you see the hand stick out with the eye that opens up and starts looking around. You're like, okay, all right, this is where Dark Samus comes from, and I'm ready for Metroid Prime 2. Let's get it.
Hell yeah.
So it's so good.
Yeah, I agree. I like how at the end of Metroid Prime 2, when Dark Samus is kind of unstable, you see Metroid Prime's face from the core.
Mm-hmm.
So there's
Yep.
definitely that clue there. I don't know if Samus ever figures it out, but and in Metroid Prime 3 actually kind of caps off that whole story because it explains that Metroid Prime was the guardian for the Leviathan seed on Talon 4.
Yep.
And Emperor Ing was the guardian for the Leviathan seed on Ether. So it kind of wraps up, and there's this whole self-contained story. I think they call it the Galactic Phazon Crisis. Is just kind of that overarching story arc. And in Prime, the Prime games do take place between Metroid 1 and Metroid 2. And you might
Yeah.
think that it's not important, that the Metroid series doesn't really need a timeline, but it is important because at the end of Metroid 2, Samus exterminates every Metroid aside from 1, and then at the end of Super Metroid, that Metroid dies. Of course, they managed to throw them in every game via Galactic Federation experimentation or whatnot, but I think in Fusion, don't the X parasites mimic the Metroids or something?
Yeah, essentially because they latch on and they drain the energy from you. But Samus, with her first encounter, which causes her to crash her ship, once she goes through that surgery, her body can now absorb them, and
Yeah.
they benefit her. So I love Fusion so much. That's actually the first Metroid game I ever played, and I had no idea what the series was even about. And so the first cutscene where you see Samus take out the little creature and the X parasite floats up and takes over her body, you're just what is happening? What is
I think
oh my gosh.
Prime was my first Metroid game, but I didn't actually get too far into it. I think Fusion was one of the first games that I really got really far into.
Yeah,
Um,
that game, amazing.
Because there's that difficulty curve with Prime and no direction whatsoever, so you're really sure what to do, unless you fuck around too long and then the map tells you, okay, here, go here. And that's an aspect that's in all three games. I do like that. There's no Prime 3 does have a lot more of that, like go here, do this. But I like how Prime 1 and 2, and Prime 2 kind of does tell you generally where to go. But I do like as a whole how the series kind of allows you to explore. And then if you spend too long in one area, then they're like, okay, you're fucking around. Here's what you got to go do. And they give you kind of a hint. Luminoth technology here, or Chozo technology here. Okay, cool. So
I did not like the way they did it in Metroid Prime 2. Now, don't get me wrong, of course they had to put it in there for the gamer that didn't understand where they were going, but they gave literally no context. With Metroid Prime 1, the first time you get that notification to go check out like where the Hive mecha is, and you get the first missile, it says seismic activity detected. Like there's rumbling over here. Okay, that makes sense. Let me go check it out. But just Luminoth technology. Like nobody ever told me about any of this. Why am I going over here and getting this? It's just random. It just appears out of nowhere. So I didn't like that much, but at the same time I understood, and I was like, okay, this is just to give players a jump, let them know where they're supposed to go. And but going back to talking about that, Metroid Prime 3 honestly feels like the most linear of all three games. It feels like you constantly are being told, okay, this is where you're going, you need to do it. And honestly, you backtrack a little bit, but not too much. I think the most backtracking in the game you do is having to go back to Skytown to get the boost ball and then the spider ball. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, Metroid Prime 3 does have a lot less backtracking. Again, like Prime 2, it's more segmented. You go, okay, now I'm going to go to Norion. Now I'm going to go to Brio. Now I'm going to go to Skytown Elysia. Now I'm going to go to the Space Pirate Homeworld. And it's the first game that lets you go to different planets and
use your ship.
Use your ship, which was really cool. Prime 3 Ultra also introduced the Wii control system, which honestly works perfect. A lot of people feel that Wii games, as a whole, are kind of gimmicky, and they don't, and the motion controls aren't quite, just kind of detract from it. But I've heard overall that people are pleased with the way that the Metroid Prime series was held with Prime 3 and then the Prime Trilogy remakes. Which I think is superior to the GameCube version. I mean, you can point anywhere you need to shoot. It's so much easier. Of course, when I was having difficulty with my sensor bar, it was kind of annoying, but
yeah,
I have a wireless sensor bar, and if it runs out of battery, you're kind of fucked. You got to hold it up like right here to the screen to make it work. But other than that, it works pretty flawlessly. So I'm wondering how they're going to treat that system in Metroid Prime 4. I think what would be ideal is to give players a choice if you want to use the dual sticks on the Nintendo Switch, or if you're not playing in handheld mode, to have the option to use the Joy-Cons and point at the screen.
Either the Joy-Cons or they have the gyroscopic movement.
Yeah.
Where kind of like they did in Prime 1, but they also give you the dual analog option. Like if you have all three of those choices, I feel like it'll be perfect. It's kind of like you customize your own Metroid Prime 4 experience. Okay, you've played the first three games and you've experienced different types. Now you choose. Yeah. You've waited long enough. You figure out how you want to play it. Like I could talk about that game for days, man. I what I want it to be, what I hope is in it. Oh man, I'm so excited. And I've heard rumors of September 2021, but I don't know. Yeah, probably not.
I mean, with the trilogy, I think there should be a trilogy re-release on Nintendo Switch as well, using the new control system, whatever they decide to go
remastered
with, and actually remaster it. Because from what I understand, the trilogy remake on the Wii is just the first two games is just ports. They're not really remastered. Let's remaster all three games. Let's do a consistent UI across all three games, or a more consistent UI, so that and like heads up display, so that way you kind of have this more seamless experience between all three games. I think that would honestly be the best way to do it, and also fix some things, like no more missable enemy scans, please. Like I get it, if it's a boss, fine, okay. Like if it's an enemy that shows up during a boss fight, I get that, it's a one-time scan. But like enemies that just disappear after a certain amount of time, that's bullshit. Come on.
Yeah, you need to be able to go back, because not everybody's going to catch that every single time. And if they rip the
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. If they rip the opportunity for you to get that important missable scan, it kind of takes away from the game, because you get to the end and you're like, well, I've done all this work, but I'm at 99%, and there's no way I can finish it. And so either you have a dedicated heart and strong will, and you go back and you do it all again, or you're just like, man, fuck this. I'm done. I can't.
With the Prime Trilogy, at least your scans carry over.
Yes.
Which benefited me. That's why I made the exception that I did with Prime 1. I was like, well, my scans carry over, so as soon as I scan this Shriek Bat, it's going to tell me that I got 100%. And it did, which is good. So I did like that aspect. But I would say, fix that so that there's not as many missable enemy scans, and also fix the scanning in Prime 1. I really feel like they could totally implement the full object scanning, and that would make that game, optimal for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%.
But yeah, with Prime 3, they did introduce the new controls. I felt were too gimmicky. I felt, although I did feel that some of the extra like challenges, like pulling the energy cells out and some of those other, um, Wii remote mechanisms, were a little gimmicky. Some of them don't work as well. Like when you have to point the Wii remote to like toward and from the screen, it doesn't usually
You have
work.
to pump in and out, and you're like,
I'm like, come on. The twisting wasn't too bad. I kind of thought that was interesting, but
yeah, when you're pulling the energy cells out of the wall ports and you just twist, pull. And also, I had a lot of issues. The transit systems in the Pirate homeworld, where you have to lift the Wii remote up and it'll automatically slide to the right, and you have to lift it down. There was one part where I was actually earlier this morning when I was about to go to phase. I pulled it up and it went to the right, and then I went down, and then it started like spasming a little bit, and just kind of went up and down like tick, 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 tick. And I was like, "This what?" So yeah, the gimmicky is the perfect word for that, because I saw what they're trying to do, and it's really cool, but the fluidity of it's not very smooth. So.
Right. those were a little unnecessary, but they're not too bad. They don't hamper the game in any way.
Yeah.
I also. Shit, I forgot what I was gonna say. Prime 3 does feel a lot more linear to me, I will say. And not having switchable beams and not having the like super missiles power bombs was kind of a letdown. Although the beam stacking system is a staple of about in half of the games. So I mean, it's not really that big of a deal. Hyper mode I actually kind of enjoyed. I just wish there was more that you could do in hyper mode, and I wish that the game didn't rely on as much with hyper mode, because one of the things that frustrated me is when you're fighting a boss, right, that requires you to use hyper mode, but your health is too low. What the fuck are you supposed to do? You have to wait for the boss to use an attack that generates some pickups, and really try hard to not die.
It just adds length to the game, and it kind of sucks, especially when you're trying to do a quicker run and you have to wait. And it's stupid, but
it's just padding.
I also didn't really like the fact that, I mean, yeah, the hyper abilities were really cool, like the hyper missile, the hyper beam, or the hyper grapple, and the hyper ball. But I didn't like the fact that you had to beat the main Leviathan seed to get them. I wish that there were more. I guess I don't really know what they could have done, but I wish that there were more, iconic weapons that you could have gotten, more valuable stuff, because it felt like it was kind of a letdown. I feel like I would have rather found like hyper missiles in the middle of just exploring Brio, or if I go in hyper mode and something happens and I fire a missile at the wall and it just creates some sort of, I don't know, I'm just bursting ideas at the seams here, but it was for me it was a letdown beating the seeds and you just get a hyper ability, because hyper ball, you just literally shock the area around you, and it does a lot of damage, and it's a really good thing to have once you're in phase, because you have to have it in order to get down to where Dark Samus is. But I don't know.
Yeah. I definitely think the hyper mode abilities were meant to replace like super missile, power bomb, because you have your hyper ball, you have your hyper missile, but at the same time they're not. Those are iconic items that I didn't feel like the hyper mode abilities really completely replaced. And I wasn't really sure what the point of the ship missile expansions were. I mean, aren't there only maybe a couple instances where you even use the ship missile?
Oh man, don't even get me started on the fucking ship missiles, man. I hate them so much. I think the ship missiles were supposed to replace power bombs, because you use them to just do massive explosive damage. Like,
can you do that at any time? Because I only thought there were just certain points in the game where you could.
You can't. There's 11, or let's see, you start with 3, so there's 8 ship missile expansions that gives you a total of 11. But you have to be in a certain area where you can open it. I did like the command visor, though. The command visor's cool. Where you open the command visor and you have the ship icon and you can just blow it up. Like, there's a golem in the middle of the Grand Court on Brio that you can't do anything with it until you get ship missiles, and then you can blow it up. And I think there's a missile expansion at the bottom of it. But I guess it was supposed to replace power bombs, but you can't do it at any time, and that's why I hated it. Because power bombs, you could literally just, oh hey, I want to see what this does. Let me just shit out a power bomb right here. And
yeah, And if you get enough powerbomb expansions, it's not a problem. Hey, I got 10 powerbombs. I can waste one.
Yeah.
Maybe we can waste two.
Oh yeah.
I remember the Emperor Ing fight at the end of Prime 2 when you're trying to magnetically. That part is really frustrating to me, but it is cool. But like those enemies are constantly knocking you off, and so I just power bombed the shit out of them. I was like, "Fuck off!"
Yep. If you do it just right, I think it's only supposed to allow you to destroy one of those little pods at a time.
Yeah.
But if you do it just right, you can get all of the ones in the surrounding area. And I actually beat that part in like four different power bombs. I think there was like 10 or 11 little pods that you have to blow up, and the little ink creatures on the side really helped because they were constantly dropping power bomb pickups, and I liked. It felt like
and health pickups.
Oh yeah, and the first time I played Prime 2 was for the GameCube. I swear they updated the amount of pickups you get in boss fights for the trilogy, and so it felt like a little easier. It felt a little easier to make it through those fights, because I remember the first time fighting Emperor Ing, I struggled quite a bit. I died like 5 or 6 times, and yeah, it's probably it probably helps that I'm a lot older and I'm a lot better at video games, but man, it was hard when I was a kid.
Yeah, me too. I almost beat Prime 2 100%. I collected every pickup, and I just got to the part where you fight Emperor Ring. This was on the GameCube version, and I never beat him. He was just so hard. But this time, I didn't have too much of a difficulty with it. I mean, it took a couple tries, and I'm thankful that the game saves after you beat him. Thank God.
Yep.
Because you scan that save station and it's like you cannot use this, and I was like, "Fuck!" So if I fuck up, then I'm gonna have to. Because I know you fight Dark Samus. I already knew that was in the countdown at the end of the game. You do have to fight her. So I was like, so if I die, I'm gonna lose. So and I did die because I couldn't quite figure out how to beat Dark Samus. I didn't figure out that you had to collect the Phazon in the air, which, by the way, doesn't work very well. I don't know if anyone else had difficulty with that, but I felt
did.
Every time I was trying to
so much.
I was looking online, everybody was like, yeah, just hold the charge beam. It's not that hard. But every time I did, I just got damaged instead.
Yeah, if you move, honestly, I think they designed it to where if you try to move to collect them all, kind of like a vacuum cleaner, if you try to like get them up, that's when they damage you the most. But if you stand still, it just pulls them straight in. And I didn't realize that until like the third or fourth attempt. And at this point, there's 3 minutes and 30 seconds left in the fight, and this bitch still has half her health left. And so I'm panicking, trying to figure out, okay, I need to get this done. And so I just figured out that standing still makes it a lot easier than trying to sweep, because she's literally just sitting there absorbing energy and just building up these attacks. And those missiles that she fires at you does a lot of damage. I think they do like 75 damage per hit too. It's ridiculous.
Which otherwise the fight isn't too hard. I mean, most of her attacks I felt like were actually fairly easy to avoid, and it was pretty obvious whenever the scan tells you can't use the dark visor, you can't use the dark visor. Oh, okay, so I use the echo visor. Cool. That was it. But yeah, that whole part, I don't think I ever figured out. I think I was moving back and forth, but I managed to beat her by chance. What I found out was better was not moving the reticule too much. Because I was thinking back, and I was like, in the original GameCube version, you don't move it; it just stays still. So what if I just hold it, and then it worked better for me when I wasn't trying to move my charge beam to collect the pieces.
Yep. And one thing I really like about the controls is that you can turn off the lock-on free aim, and so you can make it to where when you lock on an enemy, it's like the original games, like your arm cannon stays still. Okay. And so I really like that because you can focus on your enemy, and if you can, I think you can wiggle a little bit and break out and like do free aim. But I never really liked to do that because I liked, especially with that Dark Samus fight, it's easier to just focus on her.
Okay,
so
I never turned off lock on free aim. Mostly because I did like the ability. I did like the compromise. You can lock on, and you're like your missiles will home in, but like you can still free aim when you need to. But maybe it would have been easier in some parts to turn that off. I like how Prime 3 takes advantage of it. There are definitely some enemies that you're meant to hit you're meant to free aim at things, like the Berserker Lords and Berserker Knights and Berserkers.
Rage filled my heart. You said Berserker Lord, and rage filled my heart. It's the first boss you fight, and then they just appear in different parts. And of course, they get easier to beat, but they're still annoying. Yeah, like one charged hyper mode shot, or one charged hyper beam shot, they're dead. Done.
Is it really?
Yep. You hold it all the way. You have to charge it all the way though, because when you hold it, I think your shot lasts like 5 or 6 seconds. I love that. That's one of my favorite things in Prime 3. The hyper beam fully charged, because it's just a continuous wave of phason just coming out of your. But it lasts like 5 or 6 seconds, and one of those will take a Berserker Lord out. It's great.
I think I was a little bit more conservative with my ammunition and with hyper mode between the games. I think that was one problem, is I feel like I didn't get to enjoy using the power bombs as much or hyper mode as much, because I just didn't want to waste all of my ammunition or all of my energy. But with Prime 3, I kind of did like how, I mean, essentially I would use hyper mode whenever I was forced to, or if something was just too difficult and I felt like I could clear it pretty easily. You know, there are certain enemies that are more weak to phase on, or when enemies go into hyper mode. You go into hyper mode to beat them. There was one part that really frustrated me, and I just thought about it. Kind of random, but you know the one part in the pirate homeworld before you get the Nova Beam, and you're just fighting all these pirates?
Yes.
So I beat this before, and I guess I forgot, because whenever I was playing it again recently, I was just fucking trying to kill all the pirates, and then they kept coming. And I was like, when the fuck do they stop? And then I realized you have to make them, you know, launch into that whatever the fuck that thing is up at the top that sucks them in. And
it looks like a sound system, honestly. It looks like speakers that come down. Yep. And you have to do it 4 times. You have to. I tried to save one of the weaker pirates.
Yeah.
And then as soon as that system comes in, just kill it, and then they fly up. It's so funny watching them just like hold on for dear life in the middle,
and he just charged me.
It's just freaking. It's great.
That was great.
Oh, dude, it's so cool. The Nova Beam is awesome. I love it. Now that I'm thinking about the beam stacking, you know, I have a deeper appreciation for it, because the Nova Beam is awesome. It allows you to go to Elysia and get the final map data for the pirate homeworld, so you can find where all the pickups are, and you can just the green. I love green. That green beam, and I love how each of the beams represent the arm cannon shape of different iconic beams from the first game. Like the plasma beam looks like the dark beam and the ice beam from the first 2 games. The Nova beam, when you get it, looks like the wave beam and the light beam from the first 2 games. It's really cool, and hyper mode is like a combination of those two. And I do miss the beam selection, but it was really cool saying, okay, cool, I have this little. I like the way it looks.
Speaking of the beams of the first 2 games, I remember connecting everything and learning that pretty much every item in Metroid Prime 2, even if it's by a different name, is basically the same items as in Metroid Prime 1. I mean, because the light beam is essentially the plasma beam, although you have to charge it to get the burning effect. Same thing with the dark beam. You get the freezing effect when you charge it, like the ice beam. And then functionally, the Annihilator beam does act a lot similar to the wave beam when it comes to the sonic equipment. Which is similar to using the thermal visor and the wave beam in Prime 1. So, and I did like the dark visor was the X-ray visor. And the echo visor was functionally in a lot of ways similar to the thermal visor. So in terms of solving puzzles and whatnot. So that was pretty cool. Although adding the screw attack, awesome. I mean, it doesn't work. Space jump and screw attack don't work the same way they do in the other games, but it's still fun as hell to just.
That would be OP.
Blow into enemies. Yeah, exactly.
You just blow everything up. I think they did a good job limiting it to 5 jumps with the screw attack, and it does open a lot more opportunities for you to go and explore places. But it would have been absolutely broken if they had just said, "Yeah, you can just jump forever."
Yeah,
it works in the
space
2D
jump
games.
is just a double jump. In the original games, I know space jump is what allows you to continuously float. And screw attack is what gives you that damaging edge. Prime 1 kind of did a little bit differently. The space jump boots allow you to just do a double jump. And then screw attack gives you additional jumps, but only 5 plus that energy. Do you ever remember doing ghetto screw attacks in the 2D games?
Oh, like wall jumping up, like kick climbing, that kind of stuff?
No, like whenever it's called a ghetto screw attack by the community. It's when you hold the charge beam while you're space jumping.
Oh yeah! Oh wow, I completely forgot about that. And some enemies it'll kill, and other enemies it'll damage you and damage them a little bit. And so, Yeah.
It's a way of screw attacking before you could. And then shine sparking. Oh my god, how many fucking shine spark puzzles?
Oh man.
I remember I got every pickup in Metroid Zero Mission, and I did all the shine spark puzzles, even the morph ball ones. They're fucking hard as hell. But
Yeah.
if you do it enough times, then you get it down.
Shine Spark is one of my favorite abilities in the Metroid series, honestly, because when you get that speed and that momentum and you stop, and the animation shows Samus like stop and lean down and then just launches herself.
Yeah.
Especially, I think Other M did it really, really well
Other
with
M
that
did it well.
effect. And God, Other M, that's a whole other conversation. Oof.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love that, and I think I only 100%ed Metroid Zero Mission once, and yeah, those Shine Spark puzzles are ridiculous. Like you have to angle them perfectly, and when it doesn't work, you just want to throw the Game Boy across the room.
Exactly.
It's just it's frustrating. Ghetto Screw Attack though, I love that.
It's a lot of fun. There's so many cool things, and I love how the Metroid series overall, has encouraged speed running and even sequence breaking to an extent. Although they patched a lot of that in the Prime Trilogy version, but yeah, it looks like we're hitting up on an hour here, so I guess we'll go ahead and wrap things up. But I mean, there's still so much to talk about.
Oh man, we should definitely do this again sometime, or just talk about more Metroid related stuff. This has been a blast, and I really appreciate you having me.
Yeah, no problem, man. Feel free to come on any episode. I mean, we encourage guests. I'll let you know what's coming up, and as far as this bonus round goes, it's anything goes. I decide as is per episode what I want to do. So.
All right, man. Well, thank you so much, Ashley. This has been an absolute blast, and man, it feels good to finally sit down and have a conversation with somebody about one of my favorite game trilogies of all time. Metroid, Samus. Samus is one of my favorite characters of all time. She's my main in Smash forever and always. And I appreciate it. It's been a blast.
No problem, man. Yeah, Metroid for me is one of my favorite series, probably right after Zelda. Like my second favorite game series. And I think the Prime trilogy overall is my favorite part of the Prime series. I mean, I guess just one last thing is we'll talk about what's our favorite game in the trilogy.
For me, it's Prime 1. That's the game that I have just absolutely massacred on multiple levels. It's just I can get through it without I think that's the only Prime game that I can definitely get through without getting any objective notifications like, yeah, screw you, you guys aren't telling me anything, I'm already headed there. I'm already halfway there. so definitely Prime 1, just because of how it made me feel as a kid, the phase-on mines and just the fear aspect of being there and being so alone while you're just dealing with all of that stuff. I love it so much. So Prime 1 for me. How about you?
It's hard to say because I like them all for different reasons. I mean, I definitely see Prime 1 as... I mean, it's still considered one of the greatest video games of all time. It's between that and Super Metroid as being the Ocarina of Time of the Metroid franchise. But there are some holdbacks from Prime 1 that I do like that the other games do a little bit better. Prime 2 has always kind of drawn me in. I like the Dark Ether aspect. I don't know why. It's maybe for the same reason about Majora's Mask. There's a gameplay aspect that you think would be punishing, but it actually makes the game, it like enhances the game. Yeah. And then there's Prime 3, which introduced the controls and is the most technically advanced game, but also misses out on some of the atmosphere of the previous games, and that there's more dialogue and there's less of that isolated feeling, and it does feel a little bit more linear. But I guess if I had to pick, Prime 2 is the one that always seems to draw me in. And it's I think it's a good compromise between Prime 1 and Prime 3.
Oh man, I know I just finished all 3 of the games, but now that we've talked about it, I'll probably start a new file tonight.
Hell yeah, dude! I'm probably gonna play some more too, definitely.
Oh man!
But yeah, you can find Collateral Gaming wherever you get your podcasts. We are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts. We're trying to get on Pandora. I actually recently started that process. We have our RSS feed on Podbean. You can find us on Chill Lover Radio, iHeartRadio. wherever you get your podcasts. If you like Collateral Gaming and you love movies, check out Collateral Cinema Movie Podcast, our parent podcast. It's where I started out on. I'm on that show, and if you know my brother Dakota from the show, he's on there as well. And so we have a lot of fun talking about movies. We just finished our season finale on Best Friends, which
Congratulations.
is yeah,
That's
our
awesome.
season 3 finale. We're starting up season 4. Collateral Gaming is in season 2, starting up season 3. But Best Friends is the movie starring Tommy Wiseau and Greg Sestero for the first time since The Room.
Tommy
So that was
was
a fun.
I love Tommy Wiseau. Yes, sir. I did not hit her. I did not.
It's bullshit. I did not hit her. I did not. Oh, hi, Mark.
Oh, hi,
Yeah,
Mark.
we did as an indie game review. We did The Room, the Flash version, the Flash game.
Oh, beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. I wish I could have been there for that. That
was our holiday special. But yeah, stay tuned. We're going to be talking about Action 52, one of the worst video games of all time. I'm definitely looking forward to that. And then our season finale on Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag.
Awesome. Yes, sir. Oh,
So,
thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, no problem, Zach. It was fun having you on. Let me know if you ever want to be on, man. I mean, definitely there's going to be probably some more Metroid games we'll talk about at some point. So,
yes, sir. And if you guys ever want to talk Zelda, I'm all for that too, because, favorite series of all time.
That is my favorite series of all time. So we're actually are going to be talking about Zelda next season. I'll go ahead and reveal that. Our season premiere is going to be Majora's Mask.
Oh, cool. Looking forward to that, man.
All right. Well, thanks for being on, man. I guess that being said, I'm Ashley Chancellor.
And I'm Zachary Guillot.
This is Collateral Gaming. We are out. Collateral Gaming is an L Company production. All music and game clips are owned by their respective creators and are used for educational purposes only. Please don't sue us. We're poor.